Um, but what I'm gonna do is today I'm focusing on Mercury. So I'm looking down because I as I was looking for information to share today, actually, I put it off until today because I figured I would just kind of uh, free flow with it. But as I was doing that, I said to myself, I know I've put this information somewhere before. And so I was looking on my Substack to see which post it was in. And it wasn't there. Like I have a little resource list where I put all of my posts related to the different planets or houses or topics in astrology, and it wasn't there. So then I remembered it was a podcast episode, but it was before I started sharing my podcast notes onto Substack. So it was from last April 2024. However, I had all my notes because, as you will find, I have Mercury in Virgo, and we Virgo people love to be organized and categorize and have our data and our details. And so I have all of that. So I'll be looking down at that today, and then also just taking questions. And then towards the end, I will draw some oracle cards or tarot cards for anyone who wants, or maybe for the collective. So we'll see. Sometimes more people join as we go. But I know it's a holiday weekend because Father's Day tomorrow, and it's also the big day of No Kings demonstrations. Mercury. So most people know Mercury only because they hear Mercury's in retrograde, and that is like the source of everything going wrong. Miscommunications, things with technology, things with travel. So most people are familiar with Mercury as a big cause of some missed connections and things that just kind of get fumbled. Um, However, I wanted to share a little bit of an intro, and first just the astronomy. So it's the closest planet to the sun, and its orbit is 88 days, and its day and its year are the same length, are 88 days, because there's one side is always facing the sun and the other is always in the dark. So already we're kind of getting into that dual face of Gemini, which is one of the signs that Mercury rules. And as I alluded to earlier, Virgo is the other one. Um, and so it's both light and dark always. So it's already got the two faces happening. And then in mythology, Mercury is the name of the Roman god that came from probably the Egyptian god Thoth. And then the Greek version was Hermes Trismegistus. I always say that wrong. Most people just say Hermes. And we know that. We know that God was the messenger. So already we're getting this theme of connecting the messenger between the gods and the mortals. So could go back and forth. And I believe Hermes was the son of Zeus, and his mother was a nymph named Maya. So he also led souls to the underworld. So again, a lot of this kind of going back and forth, um, connecting different worlds and different people and taking messages. In some of the mythology, the things that Mercury is associated with are thievery, trade, hospitality, athletics, astrology, and even like mine, guard dogs. Although she's not really in her guard dog mode right now. So moving on quickly to and I am putting all of this information in a post, and I will share that with my paid subscribers. So the basic associations for astrology, as I mentioned, Mercury rules 2 signs, um, and not all planets get 2 signs, but Mercury is one of them that does. And so it rules Gemini and Virgo. It's what's called exalted in Virgo, which means it's in its fall in the opposite sign in Pisces. And it doesn't mean it can't function there. It just maybe has a little bit of a out of character way of functioning in Pisces. And then it corresponds to, if you're familiar with the houses in astrology, where it goes around the wheel of the zodiac or of your chart. It's associated with the third house, which is about the close networks. So your siblings, your neighborhood, short trips. It's also travel, writing, communication. If I didn't say that. Media is another one. And then its element is earth. Some of the body systems that it's associated with are the nervous system is a huge one, making these, again, connecting with your brain and through the motor neurons to tell your body what to do. And then taking the sensory neurons with the messages from your body back up to your brain for processing. And it's associated with the throat chakra, the fifth chakra, because of things like speaking. It is more, it's more left brain processes, and I would say that Jupiter and Sagittarius might be more of the right brain, where it's kind of getting the gestalt of things and looking more at the whole with that kind of thinking function. Whereas Mercury is more, again, looking at the data and getting to a point where it can be analyzed. Or another way to look at it is maybe it's more about the facts, whereas Jupiter might be more about the truth of things. Just in general, one way to look at it. The other way that I started thinking about it is that Gemini is the Mercury function that's going out there because it's so curious and it's collecting, gathering a lot of these pieces of information. These intangibles is what I was thinking. But it's kind of indiscriminate about gathering these things. And so then it can hand it off to Virgo, and Virgo being, Gemini is an earth sign, Gemini is an air sign, Virgo is an earth sign. So Virgo wants to make this tangible. So Virgo is going to bring this discernment to kind of sort out what the Gemini function has gathered, to make it something useful and efficient. So there's kind of this childlike quality when Mercury is in Gemini, all this curiosity and quickness running around. And in Virgo, it can feel a little more like burdened or pressure because there's a lot of sorting and labeling, discerning activities to do. And then the other note that I had was just, I always put the caveat out there that the whole birth chart matters, so it's hard to look at anything in isolation. Mercury, especially if it's close to another planet, it takes on the agenda, the characteristics of that other planet in that sign. Because of that ability to connect. It's very mutable. It's comfortable just kind of going back and forth and not being itself for a while. Very, very fungible planet. So and then I had one other note about, as I opened with, like many people hear about Mercury in retrograde, and I think it goes into retrograde 3 or 4 times a year. So quite a few people will be born with Mercury in retrograde. And in evolutionary astrology, in the lineage that I studied, the Jeffrey Wolf Green method, he talked about Mercury in retrograde being a soul that is very focused on gathering only the information that's necessary for their soul plan in this life. And so it probably doesn't do well in our school system where there's just a lot thrown at you and not a lot of context about why it's important. And so they tend to really just want to know, like, what is important for me to know, what's useful for me to know, and they won't really easily take in facts just for the sake of they're going to be on the test and I have to memorize them. So that is something to keep in mind, or maybe look at your own chart and see if you do have Mercury in retrograde. Okay, so um, the other thing, in that Mercury in retrograde asks, I wrote down here just some deeper questions for us to think about. Um, are we being flooded with facts to purposely hide the truth? So this could be whether, Mercury is in retrograde in the sky, or if it's in your birth chart. Um, do we say all the right things to maintain relationships, but never say the truth? During those retrograde periods, that's something we're being asked to focus on. It's like, okay, let's refine our communication. And then what do we perceive about others based on superficial data? And is that true? So it's getting to that maybe higher octave of Mercury, where it's going deeper. Okay. And then when we look at what Mercury might represent in that individual's life in the birth chart, um, it's one's process of thinking. So that can be the pace. It can be how you prioritize information that's coming in um, through your brain. It's kind of like the computer function of us. Um, it's how one's intentions translate into words. So we we all know, some people will just say whatever, whatever's on their mind or kind of floating through. That may or may not be their intention, but that's how it translates into words. And some other people may be like Yoda or something. They may be speaking in like riddles, and maybe what they're intending to communicate just comes out that way, that causes us to have to maybe work a little harder. It's also how like I would perceive you through your words. My Mercury situation in my chart can help give insight into that. And then it can also be just our baseline mental stance when we're dealing with uncertainty. Like, do we jump into wanting to take action? Like, that's our first thought when we're dealing with uncertainty, or do we tend to go kind of maybe turtle? That might be more of a Cancer situation where we just want to like protect ourselves. So it can describe that as well. Um, and hold on, let me just see if I missed anything in what I was writing out for the post. Yeah, and some of the things that I'll put in that in the Substack post are the associations. Like, some of these functions and attributes are as I just talked about, data collection, labeling, sorting, kind of that computer function of our brain, connections, curiosity, close networks, neighborhoods, short trips, teacher and student. I don't think I mentioned that one. Teacher and student, mentor, mentee, and like quickness, and then that kind of pace and how we hand things off. So now I'm going to just go through sign by sign, what and I think there's other only couple people on, but if you know your Mercury sign, you can put it in there and I can say a little more. But I'll just go through from Aries to Pisces. First, I'll talk about the perception piece of Mercury, and the second will be about the communication style or vibe or baseline, however you want to think about it. So, Aries, the perception side, it seeks to know, what do you want? Are you a threat? As quickly as possible. So when you're talking with uh, people who have Mercury and Aries, you'll kind of notice that they're impatient. Like, they're trying to figure out, what the heck do you want from me? And they're just kind of on this mission. And so their communication will be very direct. Okay, so Mercury and Scorpio in the eighth house. Okay, so I'll remember that one, Georgie. So they're also very direct and quick and in the moment. So that's Mercury and Aries. And then in Taurus, it seeks to know, what is your role in my security, especially this material security, like, if any? Because that Taurus Mercury is always, on some level, trying to think about, oh, how do I keep my stability, and security? And so its communication is going to be more cautious, practical, using material facts. Um, Gemini seeks to know, what information can you give me? The whole who, what, where, why, this journalistic approach. And its communication style is quick. It makes connections easily. It'll ask a lot of questions. It might just kind of dance from seemingly unrelated topic to topic. Cancer Mercuries, they seek to know, are you emotionally safe? How might you impact my home base? And their communication tends to be self-protective, uses emotion more as evidence. Whereas when we're looking at Taurus, they're an earth sign, they're looking for material things. Whereas Cancer is a water sign, so it's going to be looking through the emotional landscape. And then Mercury in Leo seeks to know, are you interested in me? Will you play with me? And the communication tends to be playful and dramatic. Mercury in Virgo seeks to know, how can I serve you? What significant details do you have to contribute? It's very discerning and matter of fact. Mercury in Libra seeks to know, how will you relate to me? What do you find beautiful and of value? Oh, I just got a message. My internet connection is unstable, so hopefully it'll be okay. And in Libra, it's aimed towards this maintaining balance and having this fair exchange, above all in the communication, which explains why people with, strong Libra energy or Mercury in Libra tend to be those diplomat people. And then Mercury in Scorpio seeks to know, why are you the way you are? So, and in the eighth house, it's probably also has this a very strong intuition, Georgie, about people, like being able to perceive what is happening in the undercurrent, what's not said. People's body language, like their face, being able to pick up on that. And it also, and the communication style tends to be, it wants to get to the heart of the matter. It's not afraid to go deep. It's kind of almost opposite of Gemini, where it doesn't want to be superficial, flitting from thing to thing. And knowing you, I know that's true. Um, and, oh, the other thing about Mercury and Scorpio, Because, and I would say this about maybe Mercury and Pisces as well, because it is so intuitive and can pick up on, with Scorpio, it's other people's energy, and psychological motivations. With Pisces, I would say it's more just the energy of the collective or the universe. But because of that, it can, cause you to shut it down when you're younger, because it's kind of it's kind of, like, creepy to be, like, a kid, and you can sense, like, when people are saying one thing, but that's not really what's going on. So, yeah, so that's Mercury and Scorpio. And then Mercury in Sagittarius seeks to know, what is your belief system? And it also tends to just zoom out. It might expand the topic. So again, a kind of opposite of Gemini, it's wanting to get to the bigger, like the bigger truth, the bigger belief. And then Capricorn seeks to know, like, how and when will you step up? Because it's very goal and achievement oriented. Its communication is therefore very linear. It has a goal. They don't really want to ramble and ramble, forever. Oh, good. Thank you, Georgie. And then, yeah, yeah. If you have any other follow-up questions, feel free. And then Mercury in Aquarius seeks to know who made these rules and who are the followers, because our Aquarians tend to be rebellious, and they want to do things if it's their own idea, if it's others, not so much. Their communication tends to be more obtuse, not necessarily in the present, but they're already thinking of something, in the future. Um, Me as a Leo, on the opposite pole of, Aquarius. I mean, my Mercury is in Virgo, but the general energy, um, it can be hard to have a discussion with an Aquarian, because they're off somewhere, in the future, and not, as opposed to really being with you. Okay, so then Pisces seeks to know, how do each of us fit more, on that really universal scale, in the universe, and they tend to just kind of go with their gut over, any evidence that's in front of them. And their communication tends to be more feeling based and inclusive. So, um, they are there are kind of classic, kind of hippie, maybe communication style there. Okay. And then I also put in my post, I was looking at some of herbs of the herbs of Mercury, because in the book here, uh, there's this, for like almost 400 years now, we've had this, Culpeper's Complete Herbal. Um, this is a very beautiful um, modernized, but it takes the same, Culpeper's original writings, and then it just adds a little modern uses, and it has beautiful, illustrations in it. But Culpeper was, and basically a not a medical doctor, but he, studied herbalism, and he wanted to put medicine back in the hands of the people. Um, and so part of it was taking what had been captured in Latin and putting it in English. And so that is how his original book came to be. So it was really a protest and an act of rebellion, to take this information out of what was already becoming a gatekeeping situation. So anyway, because he also studied astrology, there's a correlation, and this transfers to many different cultures and points in time, that certain plants are just they're just obviously like the handiwork of one of the planets. And so for Mercury, in fact, I just picked some lavender now because lavender is an herb of Mercury. And so are celery, dill, elecampane, smells so good, hazelnut, licorice, oregano, parsley. So because of the nerve connection, if if they are things that maybe act on the nervous system, not to sedate it, but more to rev it up to increase that ability to communicate. So you'll notice that a lot of those what I named are aromatics, and they help diffuse other signals or other if you're using them with other herbs, they'll help those other herbs get their constituents to where they need to go because of that diffusive property. So that is, yeah, that's a little bit of the herbs. And the other thing that I know I have another post that I'll look up on, but is in medical astrology, the planets have certain, the planets and the signs have certain affinities. And the way I learned it, it may be a little bit simplified, but the the signs give the geography, so the location in the body where there's going to be a condition. The planets are the actors. They have these certain agendas, typical actions that they're doing. So it's really useful to kind of know your baseline chart and where there may be seeds for a condition that could be aggravated by a transit. Just again, not it's impossible to to live your life according to astrology and always like knowing, oh, today I have to look out for XYZ. um, I don't think that would make a very satisfying life. However, there are certain, like if you notice something just unusual is going on with your body, it can be helpful to go see an astrologer who knows about medical astrology because they may be able to pinpoint what the culprit is. And then you can work on how do we remediate it based upon the planet in your chart that's under attack, by supporting it with things like the herbs that support that planet. So that's another thing to think about. And I believe in one of my medical astrology posts, I talk about Mercury. I'm hoping. If not, I will I will make a post on that. So now I think I will draw I'll do some cards just for the collective, and then Georgie, if you have a specific question, and I can't tell who else is on here, but if there's another person and you have a specific question or you just want a card for with general guidance, I can do that as well. Of course, I have herb water. This has sage in it. Mm. Okay, so I think I think what I will do is first, I think I'll pick from this. It's the Intuitive Whispers Oracle, by Maud Hurst, and I really like the artwork and just the messages that she puts in here. They're very empowering. Um, Today, astrologically, there. there is a lot going on. Um, Jupiter is in this what we call the last quarter square to Saturn. And it's which means it's also in a square to Neptune because Neptune is 1 degree away from Saturn right now. Um, and so, and then also Pluto is in what's called a sextile aspect to Saturn and Neptune. And so, what that means, the first part, Jupiter in the square, it is like this energy of um, you you're like walking down the hallway and then like somebody comes from a like 90-degree angle and you just like run into each other. Um and it's a very tense situation. And so um in in mythology, Jupiter is the son of Saturn. So there's kind of already this dynamic going on. And Saturn is about our limitations, whether it be time or what we've mastered um, or not in life, or, or how we have maintained discipline. Um, and so it's going to always kind of have that view. It'll change, by sign. And right now it's in Aries, so it's this very like what are you initiating to keep us on track to our goals, to our self-mastery in life, given the limitations that we have. Um, with it being close to Neptune, I think, we've already felt this, like Neptune can confuse things. It adds this fog. Um, And so we're just kind of learning how these two are impacting each other, being so close together. Um, but Jupiter coming in now, Jupiter is as I mentioned, it's wanting to kind of expand things. It's associated with Sagittarius, um, and it's looking for the kind of moral truth, and looking at things philosophically. Um, so that's not looking really with the boundaries in mind. So there may be again some kind of conflict with what um what do we think as a collective is the natural truth, the moral truth, um the philosophy versus what is able to be controlled and have boundaries and limited. So kind of interesting that all of that, is today when we are exploring those things. So, okay, so I'm going to pull a card. And um the other thing that I meant to say that I didn't write down, but I went through sign by sign for Mercury's energy. You can do that. It's just with any planet, you're just synthesizing um, the planet's agenda because the planet again will be like that actor. You're synthesizing that with the sign, and the sign is more the how, the costuming or the kind of set design um, for the actor. So you can synthesize um, with where whichever planet you're curious about, in whichever sign, and just know that the the personal planets, so those are the ones that move more quickly. They're called personal planets because they're going to be moving closer with your sun, whereas the outer planets, they move so slowly that pretty huge swaths of people who were born within a certain amount of time will have that. So it's not super personal to you because you'll share it with someone who may have been born 10 years ago or 10 years in the future. Um, so yeah, just kind of keep that in mind that when you're looking at the outer planets, so Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, um, they will be shared with other people kind of in a generation. However, the way they become personal is how they're aspecting the other planets in your chart. Okay. And then oh, interesting. Um, so yeah, so I was shuffling these cards, and I don't actually shuffle because my hand I have like baby hands, so I cannot shuffle. But I usually just kind of like make them like force them to shuffle in this way, and then I like divide the deck in half, and this is a very Virgo way of doing it. I divide it in half, and then I just pick the top card off of divide it in half, and then put it here and pick the top card, and pretty much do that for everything. Some people wait until a card like jumps out at them. That is not organized enough for me. No, thank you, ma'am. But today, as I was doing this, the card that, or I noticed a card, and it was face up. So it wasn't like in my nice organized, like everything's face down. So in this case, I guess I will veer off and say it's for us. And it's so it says fill your cup, and it has a hummingbird on there. It looks a lot like the tarot. It almost looks, well, it has butterflies. It almost looks like, well, it has, I think, some pansy and maybe some hyacinth. It almost looked like lavender in the back, but I think it's more like hyacinth. Um, and then it has some quartz in there as well. Um, yeah, so um, wow. Yeah, so what I'm getting is maybe another way to look at today, going to, if you are going to a demonstration, um, or you're just there in spirit. Maybe another way to look at it is we are we're connecting. So I find this really, it's very on topic for today with the Mercury. Maybe it's more an exercise in connecting with your community, with your people, with your own truth, um, and your soul's calling. It may be more about that than actually um, trying to prove something to the forces that be. I almost think that approaching it from that way, and that's why I call it a demonstration rather than a protest, um, because honestly, they don't effing care. Like, they don't care what we're doing. So I don't want to go in with this sense of futility to my purpose. So instead, I'm demonstrating what matters to me, and part of that is my community and um, being there and being with other people who care about compassion and the truth, and the truth of what this country was built on, and why certain people are more things have come more easily to them because of they've had generations where they've been in that position of authority and having more rights, where other people of different colors and situations, with how they were brought here, how they were kicked out of where they were here already, um, what their religion was, things like that. they haven't had those same advantages for maybe ever. Some maybe not, just not nearly as long. Um, and um, so I guess, what another way to see it is that whole um, recognizing that we're all whoever is out there. Today we are also filling up our cup, but also for people who maybe it's not as easy for them to be out because they're afraid they're going to get carted away or whatever. Um, so yeah, I was even when I was at the hospital with my mom earlier this week. I I heard some of the techs and the nurses talking because a lot of them are from somewhere else, and they were like, Should I start carrying my green card with me?" Um, and here they are, like trying to take care of people. So yeah, so there's a lot of that going on, and I totally went off on a tangent. Um, so yeah, I haven't looked at what's happening, but I know Mars has been conjunct my own Mars and which is conjunct my sun, so maybe that's why I'm extra spicy today. Um, but yeah, I think just looking at so maybe this is really for me too to remember like the emotion, the focus is not it's not against, but it's really to call in, provide support, have that type of energy. Okay. So, okay. So let me see. Um, there was another, there was another card that happened to be face up in this deck. And interestingly, it is let go of control. So yes. So I think that one um, is heard. And it may, let's see if I can see here. Okay. Yeah. If you have any other question, Georgie, otherwise I'm gonna just keep pulling cards for a little bit longer. Um, let's see here. I think what I want to do is so Jupiter has just recently gone into Cancer. So maybe yeah, I don't want to do tarot. Sometimes sometimes it's I don't know. It can be a little more heavy. But but I'm going to just pull a card about Jupiter and Cancer. Like um what are we maybe meant to focus in on while Jupiter is in Cancer for uh about I think the next year or so. So Jupiter is kind of in between the inner and outer planet. It doesn't move super fast, but it also doesn't move super slow. Um, let me see here. This deck, I love it so much. It's the Animal Elders. Um, and actually there's a blue heron on the cover, and we see those often here in Des Moines. And it kind of, when I started having my spiritual opening up, um, I would walk past my father's old law office all the time. So I moved back in the area in 2021. He passed away in 2003. Um, and this is when I was like, um, after like I was just had gotten sober, and I was really like rewiring my brain and everything. Um, but I did sense like energy every time I would go by his office. And then I started noticing these herons would nest in this tree, like right by his office. And I just felt that it was his energy. And then often when my dog and I would walk by the marina, there would be a heron like just sitting right there, oddly close or something. So if it does make me think of him as well. Um, let's see. And the author of this um, deck, Asha Frost, she's indigenous, and she looked to the animals that were symbolic in her tribe, in her tradition. But then she also a few others that they weren't in her indigenous knowledge, or they kind of wanted to be included. So, that's yes, that's beautiful, Georgie. The humming for you and your mom, and there was a hummingbird in that first card that I pulled. Um, yeah, so I know that at least one of the cards that she included that's not, or one of the animals that's not in her tradition, but that asked to be included was the orca whale, which is another one up that we're familiar with up here. So let's see today. So this will be about kind of a theme for us to focus on Jupiter and Cancer. Oh, okay. So it's Elder Bat, and it is trust your senses. Um, yeah, yeah. So there's the moon. There is like the man in the moon kind of walking back there too. But yes, we have our Elder Bat, and it's the first card, and I think Jupiter is on 1 degree Cancer. And so again, when we're thinking about Jupiter and how I was talking about that it's about philosophy, it's looking at the natural truths, where the moral truth lay. It's also about our gaining gaining a more expansive view. So if Gemini is like zeroing in to the individual data point, Jupiter or Mercury, sorry, um, Jupiter is expanding as far out as possible. And so it's a lot about this expanding your mind through higher learning, through travel. Um, and as I mentioned, it's more right brain than Mercury, which would be left brain. And so it involves the senses. So the intuition is all of that knowledge plus your senses. Um, and when we look at this really chaotic time, there's so much energy floating around there, and there's so much e- anger, which underneath anger there's always some other emotion, um whether it's fear or sadness. There's something that comes first before the anger. Even if it's really quick, it comes first. So it's easy to just see the anger because that's so loud and in our face, but to trust our senses about what came first, and maybe not get caught up in just all the angry people, but looking at what came before that and maybe figuring out well, how can I be part of the solution about that thing? Because there isn't really a solution for anger, but there might be one for for fear or grief. There might be something for that. And I think the other thing is just to trust your senses about taking in that information, or how you get involved. Um, in fact, I was just texting with my friend Melody today, and just about how we're not so into the big crowd thing, and especially when you're kind of psychically sensitive, um, it it doesn't feel good, like, being in, like, big crowds with tons of energy, so just, trust your senses, like, I'm not personally going to go to a huge demonstration in the middle of downtown Seattle, but I am comfortable going to my little one, here in the town that I live in. So trusting your senses there, and also I think with, like, that first card, how do you need to fill your cup? And maybe doing that with an eye of prevention, um, as opposed to waiting until it's empty and then trying to fill it. Because it's just easier to just keep an eye on your level and know what is helpful for you to keep your cup full so that you're not in a desperate situation. So yeah, I think a lot of that is, we may with all of this, um, honestly, just y- un unkindness and malice towards certain types of people. It's so it's so unsettling, especially if, you're someone who is, of a compassionate nature, and, however you do that, whether you're following Jesus, or, you're following Buddhism, or you're just following your own heart. Um, it's having that, like, energy in the background all the time, even if you don't, regularly consume the news or social media. Like, I don't. Once every so often, I will kind of spend, now it's more like 2 minutes. It used to be like, "Oh, I could listen to this one podcast, like, once every few days," and then it went down to once a week, and now it's like, "Okay, I can listen to maybe, like, 2 minutes of it, like, every 10 days," or something like that, just so I know what's going on. But more, I sorry, friends, but I rely on my friends to, like, tell me if there's something, major, because it's just too much. But, yeah, I think trusting your senses to know, like like I do now, what your limit is, beyond which you can't be your natural self, your authentic self. Um, because that we have enough people who are in that energy of chaos and, frustration and grief and anger, that we don't need anymore. So if there's a way that you can not, it's not like I'm bypassing all of this. Like, I'm just being more selective, in what I personally have, empowered myself to do, and knowing that is just, knowing what my limits are. But even with all of that, like, I'm not going to be as productive, and so as I normally would, because of all, it still takes time to be like, keep that energy a little bit, um, over here. And so for everybody right now, we have to just trust our senses, and maybe not push through so hard, or be so hard on ourselves about, well, how come I'm not able to accomplish everything I want to do this weekend like I used to be able to do, or just on a daily basis, or how come I keep sleeping in or, like, I've heard from so many people this week, and I even overslept. Like, that is so weird. But yesterday, I think I slept in till 7 a.m., and I because I woke up in the middle of the night and I could not get back to sleep. Um, but yeah, I heard from so many people, same thing. So we just have to, like, trust our senses and not beat ourselves up, for, for being human and allowing those things to just go through their body. And if it looks like a more sleepless night and sleeping in a little, if we have the luxury, thankfully I did, to do so, then we need to do that. Okay, let's see here. Jupiter's also, in Georgie's in your eighth house with Mercury. Okay. So, yeah, so your Mercury, it's gonna be a little more, um, broadly focused. So, because it's there in the 8th house and it's in Scorpio and it's thinking about those deep truths and kind of the bottom line psychology, it will also be because of that Jupiter there, it'll be connecting it to the larger, like, not only what does this mean for this person I'm communicating with and myself, what does it mean for the philosophy of kind of how we live as a collective? Like, how does it connect to that? And it can be where you try to sort through, what is the moral truth. Um, you might have kind of more of an ability to organize that in your mind and to discern that, which is so amazing because that, you're so well versed in it and attracted to yoga philosophy, which is a perfect example because you're looking at that huge big picture through time and space, um, and in the body, but also how we connect. But in a very also with a very, um, teachable, which is another kind of Mercury and Jupiter in a very teachable way, because Jupiter would be like the professor at the university and Mercury is like the teacher in the, you know, up to maybe high school. So you have both of those things together. So it would lend you that ability to go back and forth, to be the philosopher style, but to also be the teacher style, especially about those deep truths. I hope that I hope that helps. Yeah, that's a really cool placement and a cool combination. And it fits where where your heart naturally has brought you. Okay, well, I think we're at time, so I will make sure that we have this. It'll get posted. I will release the little post that I worked on with the different links. And I wish you a good day. Let me know. Message me if you have any questions, or for those of you watching on the replay, do the same. And have a great day. Bye.